Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy, Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. Today, I'm going to be joined by a very special guest as we break down some of the trending NFL topics from the last few weeks. We're going to talk a bit about the Combine. We're going to talk a little bit about yesterday's news, and then we're going to cap off the show with his hot take. So why don't we go ahead, take out our coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And we are here today. I am joined by the man himself, Mike Lindberg, or as he so eloquently calls himself, and I love it, Mike Grindberg, out here grinding it for Player Profiler and all sorts of facets. And now joining me today. How you doing today?
I'm doing excellent, man. Thanks for having me on the show. It's been part of my bucket list for a while now since joining the team on Player Profiler. So I'm just really excited to be able to get the day and enjoy some football talk with you, Jason.
Yeah, that's very, very thoughtful. I'm glad that you Wake and Take has made your bucket list. Hopefully, that's not the one. Hopefully, there's some other big shows you want to get on that will get you on. But good start here. And yeah. I have to tell you, I found one, ladies and gentlemen. I collect mugs. I had a Canadian mug in my pantry. This is from the 1988 Calgary Winter Olympics. So let's go Canucks, right?
How many of you were around in 1988 to remember those epic Olympics that were held here in my home country of Canada?
I was -10, so
yeah. There you go. I was 6 years old. I was able to see some of that stuff, but I don't remember it much.
This is always cool to have, things going on in your country. But that's not what we're here for today. We're not here for a Canada show, or else Jack Kavanaugh would have been here as well as a bunch of other people. We're here to talk some football. And let's see. Let's just go ahead and run through some of the actual news that we have, and then we'll get your thoughts on some of the bigger topics, and then we'll talk about your hot take. And also what you're working on with Player Profiler. So we'll kind of start with just the small stuff, get it out of the way. Zach Ertz has signed with the Washington Commanders. This is a 1-year deal worth up to $5 million. What are your initial thoughts when you saw this?
Well, I was really concerned about, some of my Cole Turner shares. He was a young, tight end coming up the ranks here. And actually, it might actually be a good move for him. And the team in general. Ertz is 33, entering his 13th season. The contract's about $5 million is from what I saw. He's back with Cliff Kingsbury, which I think is a good move for them. When Ertz played parts of the season with Arizona, he played 21 games with Kingsbury through 2021, 2022. Caught 103 passes, 980 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Like, those are pretty good numbers, and I think that can be, done again. He's 33 years old, but that's not a huge number for the tight ends, landscape. So what I saw him do with, Trey McBride under his wing, I'm thinking that might happen again. I'm hoping for my Cole Turner stock. So I think it's a good move for the Commanders. They're bringing a veteran presence, and I know Cliff Kingsbury likes his guys, so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I like the move too, especially when you've just moved on from Logan Thomas. And Zach Ertz, before he got injured last season, still clearly had some left in the tank. He had a few games with 10 targets, more than a few games with 6 receptions, and was just out there catching footballs and keeping Trey McBride off the field still. And it took the injury for Trey McBride to kind of truly break out with that team last year. So I think that this is a very, very sneaky fantasy football value. I think Zach Ertz is probably available in a lot of leagues on waiver wires, or someone you could trade for, get in a throw in, and especially in a tight end premium league. Yeah, you're not going to get a lot. I'm not coming out here and saying this guy's going to score you 15, 20 points really ever, but is he going to be able to get you 10 every once in a while? I think so. I really do, especially if the Commanders do bring in Drake May. And then, of course, you already mentioned Cliff Kingsbury. They pass the ball a ton in his offense, so there's going to be volume there. And I'm curious to see how it goes. Not putting a ton of stock into it, but I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a really good landing spot. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's a system that usually likes to target their tight ends quite a bit too. So, I don't think they're going to veer off of that too much. So, yeah, it's a good landing spot. And like you said, if they can get a Drake May in there, they got a really high draft capital, and there's a quarterback going there. So we'll see where that lands. I think I like that move for a lot of their offense in general. Like their wide receivers are going to benefit from that as well. So.
Yeah, Zach Ertz is a really good tight end, everyone. Don't forget that. I know that we kind of forgot about him last season, but just even think about the first few weeks where everyone was rushing to pick him up again, dropping Trey McBride. I remember Trey McBride hitting waiver wires because Zach Ertz was playing so well, and everyone got really scared. So, I mean, this guy can still play some football. Kind of excited to see what happens next season. We'll move on from one landing spot to a rumored landing spot, and this one I'm less excited about, but it is just interesting and fun to talk about. Again, disclaimer, total rumor season. That's where we're at right now. But there are now rumblings that the Vikings are looking into Trey Lance, bringing him in to either sit under Kirk Cousins or even potentially start for them next season. And it makes a little bit of sense given Kevin O'Connell's ties. Sorry, that's wrong. Either way, Trey Lance to the Vikings. Do you like it?
It kind of makes sense. I'm not sure they're going to be able to move up to get, one of those top 4 guys at this stage with all the eyes being on JJ McCarthy after the combine. I just don't think the Vikings can do it. So now they're looking at other options, and it sounds like Cousins is on the move. Hearing a lot of chatter about him heading to Atlanta. And I love that move for Atlanta. But the Vikings are now in this position where, what are they going to do? Do you go and have a guy like Penix or Bo Nix, those are the guys going to be around where they might be drafting. I don't know. Do you really want to throw your dice on a first round, pick? Yeah, let's do it. What's the worst that could happen? He was the 3rd overall pick in 2021, has very little tread on his tires. I don't mind that move for the Vikings. I'd honestly prefer to see Justin Fields there. But it doesn't sound like anybody's in the market for Justin Fields at this stage. So, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think I'm still firmly in the camp that Kirk Cousins ends up back in Minnesota. And so I like the idea of a quarterback sitting to learn.
Yeah.
I don't think it could be Trey Lance. If you've tuned into Wake and Take, I know at the beginning of the show you said you've listened a bit. So I for some reason, have a great just big gut feeling about Trey Lance in Dallas. Like I can't describe it any other way than that, but I like it. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy when I think about Trey Lance in Dallas. So I don't want him to lose or to leave there. And I like the names that you mentioned, Michael Penix, Bo Nix. I think that those would be great quarterbacks to sit behind Kirk Cousins because they took a while to break out in college. It'll probably take them a year or two to break out in the NFL, but they are really, really good passers, and they would fit that system really well. So that's kind of more so what I'm hoping for. But I do just mention this because I still do think that we shouldn't give up on Trey Lance in super flex dynasty leagues. Like you just hang on to him and see what happens. This guy still has really, really good athleticism and just hasn't had any sample really at all. You can add up all of the completions from Trey Lance from high school, college, and now the NFL. And it is only 10 more completions than Bryce Young had last season on the Panthers. So it's like he hasn't really had much action, which of course makes you scared, but there's still so much intangibles there, so much ceiling to be had. And I'm not going to give up on Trey Lance. We'll randomly talk about him every once in a while here.
But to put that into perspective too, if you look at what happened with Jordan Love, and I know he's not behind, prolific NFL quarterbacks, but these guys have had a chance to, incubate in systems. So you're working, Trey Lance had some time to develop under Shanahan offense. And now, he's watched Dak Prescott. Maybe he's seen some things. Maybe he's developed a bit. He's still 23 years old. There's still quite a bit of room, or 24, sorry. So a lot of room to improve there. And you never know, like there could be a team that is going to take a chance, especially if they are desperate at that position, especially if they can incubate under a quarterback like a Kirk Cousins. I definitely don't mind that move at all for the Vikings.
Yeah. And the Fantasy Plumber says Trey Lance isn't even an egg yet. And you know what? That's totally fair.
Yeah.
That's totally fair. I mean, I'm still thinking 2-3 seasons down the line is when we might finally see him. I think Jordan Love is a solid comparison. Really any quarterback that's just taken forever to actually see the field. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe you can drop him and pick him up later if you really feel like it. But I don't think the Trey Lance story is done. And that will just come down to my gut feeling. I think we're going to see something from him at least one more time in the NFL.
Yeah.
So then we'll move on to some teams to kind of discuss. There's some big stuff going on in Buffalo. They released a lot of players yesterday, and a lot of it was defense. So we'll just kind of breeze through it and then kind of discuss about the importance of it. So they released Deontay Hardy. They released Jordan Poyer. They released Tre'Davious White, and they released center Mitch Morse, and they restructured Von Miller's contract yesterday. Big day for the Buffalo Bills front office, but still a bad day for them as they're still under the cap, still trying to clear up $9 million after getting rid of all those players, after getting rid of all that talent, after restructuring a massive contract with Von Miller. It's really, really tough. What are you seeing from these Buffalo Bills right now when you read into the lines here?
Well, I'm seeing a lot of good things for the team behind me, the Chiefs there, because, they invested a lot in this year. Like they went all in essentially, right? So their cap is screwed and now they're making room for it. They have to get under that cap by March 11th, and it's not looking good for them right now. They have to get younger on defense. They have a lot of veterans there. They're obviously seeing that with the cap space that they've opened up here. So it's not looking great for the Bills in the future here. They've got a lot of variables on their offense too, with Stephon Diggs being pretty disgruntled at times there. I'm assuming he's coming back, but there's a lot of uncertainty there, and especially if you have a team like that is going to have to rely on a young defense, not looking good in the future, in my opinion. I mean, the Bills are in a rough state.
They have to draft well this year. It's not even a debate at all. If they don't hit on whatever wide receiver they draft, if they don't, their defense is now completely obliterated, losing so many studs on that side of the ball. They've got to hit in the draft. They've still got to clear up a lot of space, and I don't really know what they can do. I think that this year in particular is going to be probably a rebuilding year in a way. And then they're probably going to have to look for 2025 to reopen that Super Bowl window. I don't think that they're going to be able to compete as much this year unless they hit really, really well in the draft, because you talk about it. Stephon Diggs, he's aging. And then that's really it. Like Gabe Davis is a free agent. They don't have the money to bring him back. They've just cut off Deontay Hardy, who was randomly showing up. So now you're just talking about Khalil Shakir, James Cook, and Stephon Diggs. And, of course, Josh Allen, which isn't bad, but that's just a lot of holes on this team that they're going to have to figure out. Would you be selling Josh Allen?
No, because now he's going to be more relied on to make those bigger plays. He's going to be relied on more. So we didn't mention Dalton Kincaid in that sentence there, and I think that should be mentioned as well, because he obviously opens things up in the middle of the field, and I think his value this year is going to really catapult. They're going to have to rely on him, especially if they can't pick up a wide receiver in the draft or on free agency, because I think they need to plug in there. There's somebody, they need that second option behind Stephon Diggs, and they just haven't had it, especially when he's getting double teamed. If you see in the playoffs, he pretty much in the last half of the season, Diggs went off the cliff. He hasn't done much, and it happened 2 years ago too. So there's something going on in Buffalo, and I would not be selling Josh Allen. I think his value is actually increasing now with all these with this moves, because his defense is going to give up a lot more points now, and he's going to have to sling the ball. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking, is we're about to see even more of a superhero Josh Allen. Like he's going to have to put the team on his back even more than he already has. Probably going to have to run a bit more, going to have to take some more shots. That could lead to more injuries. That could lead to some games to where he just can't find Stephon Diggs. But I do think that ceiling is still there. And you're still looking at a guy who's probably going to finish as quarterback one. I wouldn't be upset if you took Josh Allen, if you are feeling a little nervous and you just tried to tear down, but not far. Like if you wanted to try to get a CJ Stroud, a Patrick Mahomes, a Jalen Hurts, and maybe see if you can get a little cherry on top. But otherwise, you're probably best just holding on to him. He's still going to score a ton of fantasy points. And while we're on the quarterback on the Bills, they brought in their backup now. They have brought Mitchell Trubisky back to the team. Somehow, while being under the cap, they've still decided to make a move. Solid backup. Obviously, a guy who's never really done anything when actually playing and turns the ball over way more than he should. But I think he's a good backup, and I think that's a fine system for him. Any thoughts on that before we move on?
Oh, he played well in that system in the past. I mean, it's just a natural move, natural progression. Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing more to add to that.
Yeah, but don't go pick up Mitchell Trubisky going crazy or anything. The next team that's making some moves, and this happened right before we went live, so
Yeah.
I just kind of threw it on there. But the Broncos have released Justin Simmons, which kind of makes a lot of sense given the situation this team is in, as good of a player he is. And they're freeing up about $15 million with this, still finding themselves a couple milli under the cap, still trying to make some moves, but given what we're knowing about the Denver Broncos, they've now moved on from Russell Wilson with the most dead cap in NFL history. And now they're moving on from basically their cornerstone on defense. And you hear all the rumblings that they're also moving on from Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. Is this the rebuild of all rebuilds that we're kind of watching unfold here in Denver?
Yes, absolutely. And it's definitely not what Sean Payton signed up for when he when he went to the Broncos. You know, I think he made a huge mistake there, and it's really coming down to seeing what actually. I think it was more of a Drew Brees thing than a Sean Payton thing when you look down to it. I think he's riding Brees' coattail, and it's not looking good. Those that Bronco team, man, they've made some bad moves over the years. $85 million in dead cap money to Russell Wilson. That's insane. That is absolutely insane. And it's not looking any better. I hope they get their quarterback in this draft. It's good for, the AFC West to have some more competition in it. And yeah, they're opening up a lot. They're going young. I'm liking what I'm seeing from, hopefully Marvin Mims can now get into the lineup, and we see a little bit more from Jaleel McLaughlin, who I think is going to be a sleeper heading into this season. So opens up some good things for these younger guys, and hopefully they can get on the field and prove themselves, because Marvin Mims was being sought after last season in the off season and going into the drafts, and hopefully he can now pay off on that seed.
Yeah, and with Marvin Mims, I mean, Sean Payton at the Combine, or it was the GM, one of the big shots with Denver, said that the only thing holding Marvin Mims back last season was us. And so I do think that we're going to see a lot more from him next year. I think they're going to try to force him the ball. And I do find myself in the camp that at least one of Jeudy or Sutton will be leaving, if not both. I mean, I think it would make sense if I'm the Broncos, just get rid of both, especially if you're going to be moving on from so many pieces this year. And then you're talking about a team where you're going to be able to find value for fantasy football purposes. You already mentioned Jaleel McLaughlin, but Javonte Williams is probably still going to be really cheap. Marvin Mims is going to be really, really cheap. And the man who everyone forgets about, Greg Dulcich, is probably going to be really, really cheap. And they're not going to be able to add to that tight end room really at all. I know he's had injury history, but we talk about ceiling here in fantasy football. And on a team that's probably going to be behind a lot, probably with a rookie quarterback who looks for those running backs and tight ends, the short yardage routes and stuff, I think that could be a recipe for some success. So curious to see what's going on with the Broncos here. I do just want to touch on one more thing you talked about, because this is what I thought a couple days ago with the Russell Wilson news became official. I feel like the Broncos front office is getting off too easy. All of these teams, like their front offices and stuff, especially like the Browns, for example, like everyone's like, oh, the Browns front office is the worst in the league. You're talking about the Broncos, who now just had not only the biggest dead cap in the entire NFL history, but more than double the biggest cap hit in NFL history, like an insane amount. Then you just go back and look at the whole situation. They originally hired Nathaniel Hackett because they thought they could get Aaron Rodgers, and then didn't. So then they went with Russell Wilson. Then they fired Hackett halfway through the season. Then they went out and got Sean Payton, even though Sean Payton publicly doesn't like Russell Wilson. And now they're moving on from Russell Wilson after not being able to trade like Jerry Jeudy or anything all last season. Like, it has just been failure after failure after failure for this front office outside of the Peyton Manning years. And I'm really surprised that they have gotten as much slack as they have.
Yeah, and they should be under the microscope a bit more. I feel bad for the Bronco fans, because there's some diehard people that I'm very close to, and they're in awe. Like, how does that happen? And a lot of them weren't happy about the Russell Wilson move to start, and like you had mentioned on your show, I think it was a couple of days ago, those two moves, the Deshaun Watson and the Russell Wilson move, happened within like 2 days from each other, and probably the worst two trades in the history of the NFL. Like that's hilarious. I chuckled at that one.
How does that even happen? Like, one team was like, hold my beer, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's all the actual news we have from yesterday. But I do just want to get your thoughts on some of the trending topics going around the league. So we'll start with, let's do the combine. Let's just give one big takeaway from the combine, one player that's maybe rising up your stocks or a takeaway in general.
Oh God, there were so many that I loved there. I loved seeing the wide receivers ball out. If anything, some of these guys in the top end that were going in the top end of the first round, like being projected to be top 10 wide receivers, guys like Keon Coleman and Troy Franklin, who just didn't do anything to like show out, where some of these other guys did more. You know, I'm not down on Coleman. I'm not down on Franklin, but these guys didn't do anything to really show out to me, where you got a guy like, Lad McConkey or Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy. These are the guys that opened my eyes at the combine and was like, okay, I got to keep my eye on these guys a little bit more, especially Adonai Mitchell. Was not expecting him to run what he ran in that 40 with his size. I'm really impressed with him. I got him on my show tonight as one of the biggest risers. So I'm really liking Adonai Mitchell, and this running back room, which everybody thought that it was so weak. There is going to be a lot of value in this running back room. Jalen Wright showing out. That was a huge number. He needed to post, a sub 4.4, and he did. All those metrics looked really good for him. I'm loving what I see with Marshawn Lloyd. Isaac Garendo, where did he come out of? Putting up that score. He's going to turn some heads now. You can't place first in all those metrics and not have some people looking at you at that point. Trey Benson showed out. Some of these other guys that I don't know if you heard it. Is Audric Estime still running his 40 right now? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I believe he's still out there.
Yeah, is he okay? Yeah, I'm hoping to see him on the finish line. But guys like him that needed to show out. Braylon Allen needed to run a decent 40. He opted out of that, so that raises some concerns for me when you're looking at these guys that are the bigger bodied running backs that didn't test very well or didn't test at all. Makes me wonder about where they're going to head up. Bucky Irving didn't show out either. So some of these guys, that a lot of clarity happened here. It really helped me space out, especially in the wide receiver and the running back rooms. It really helped me get my rankings a little bit more tight. That's what the combine showed me in general there.
Yeah, it was a really, really great combine, especially since this class just didn't have a lot of the top end talent. Like, it was really, really nice to just put some metrics to some names and really be able to add a lot more to this process. And that's, of course, what happens every year. But I feel like this year in particular was a really, really special combine. We learned a lot. I mean, not many people had Trey Benson as, their top running back before this. And that's just what it's for. It's really nice and helpful. And I'm excited to see where a lot of these players go. I think that once we have this picture completed, we're going to be able to find some really nice values for fantasy football. So make sure you tune in to Wait and Take after the draft.
Well, and the other thing I wanted to add to that is, like, some of these guys that held out and didn't test, it really showcased some of these other guys that weren't as spotlighted headed into that, like the Xavier Worthies, the Lad McConkeys, probably even Roma Dunze, who was just didn't get off the field that whole day. Like I think he's still, running the gauntlet right now, trying to break that record. Those guys really showed out, and it shows a lot. And I think JJ McCarthy proved a lot of doubters wrong, even though he didn't, throw the best. The fact that he, went on there and said, hey, look at me. All these other guys aren't throwing. All these other guys aren't competing. Look at me. That might show some teams. And, he's being rumored to be, a top 10 guy now. And some people are ranking him ahead of Jaden Daniels, which is a little bit too aggressive for my liking. But I get where people are coming from now.
For sure. I'm a Michigan fan, so I'll defend JJ McCarthy forever. And I feel like that combine in general for JJ McCarthy and really the rest of the quarterbacks, it was very much a you see what you wanted to see kind of deal. JJ McCarthy haters left the combine still hating JJ McCarthy. People who love JJ McCarthy left the combine still loving JJ McCarthy. It was just a tale of two cities there, and really not enough was shown. And I think what was shown was that NFL teams do like JJ McCarthy based on how he interviews, based on some of his throws. And he had a really, really good 3-cone drill, which is really good for his footwork. So either way, I think that's a quarterback that we need to keep our eye on. And Jamie actually does break some news. Audric Estime just finished his 40. So
okay. Thanks, Jamie. I appreciate that. He clocked in at an all-time worst time.
100.6
days.
Well, let's go ahead and move on now to just some of the recent trending topics going around right now. And I listed some names here. We don't have to talk about all of them, but, just Saquon Barkley, Russell Wilson, Baker Mayfield, Calvin Ridley, Justin Fields. Those are kind of the big names going around right now. Is there a player out of these you want to touch
on? Well, I'll talk on Saquon Barkley, the 27-year-old. He should see plenty of interest in the open market. Some teams being thrown around for Barkley's services are the Ravens, the Raiders, the Bears, the Patriots, the Texans, and the Eagles. Yeah, I mean, I would like to see him there. I'm hearing that, maybe Derrick Henry might fit that system a little bit better with the new offensive coordinator. But, I love Barkley in that situation. He is only 27. I know that seems old for a running back, but, when you compare him to Christian McCaffrey, who's still putting up QB1 numbers, there is an age cliff for running backs. We all know that, and for every position, but Barkley is an elite athlete. He tested like that at the combine when he did that. So these guys tend to break those age cliffs a little bit better. So I'm not out on Barkley. You see guys like Mike Evans who consistently put up top numbers. I'm saying that Barkley's got a lot left in the tank, but I'm saying he probably has a good 1 or 2 years left of some good fantasy production. But I do prefer, in this situation, a younger Josh Jacobs with less severe injury in the running back market. And, out of those guys that are coming off their rookie deals. So to me, the place that makes the most sense for Barkley is the Texans, but with also Derrick Henry in the market, he may be the cheaper option there on a team that might just need somebody to bang it in the end zone on the 1 yard line.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, they're definitely done with Dameon Pierce, it appears, and there were some rumblings that they're okay bringing back Singletary. So I could talk myself into a Derrick Henry Singletary type backfield, but I want Saquon Barkley on the Texans. I'm going to keep pounding the table for that one. It's too exciting, too good for it not to happen for fantasy football. I think that would be spectacular. And that's why I am buying Saquon Barkley where I can, especially tearing down a bit at the running back position. Like you can take, even like a Travis Etienne and get Saquon Barkley in a really, really nice piece. And by the time the points start rolling in, it's probably not that much different and maybe even a little bit better. A1 says Barkley could have a CMC-like season on a new good team. And I think that that's definitely true, especially if it is a team like the Texans.
Yeah, landing spot is huge, right? I mean, if he's going to be able to go in there and get the same workload he has in the past, then I'm all in on Barkley. But, he's 27. He may not get that. He might be coming into a split backfield like all these other teams are moving towards now. And that might be actually a good move for him, too, because he has a history of injuries. And, he's a great pass catcher out of the backfield. He's known to have those big explosive plays. So, even a little bit less work on Saquon Barkley might not be a bad thing.
Yeah, no, I think that would be fine too, especially with his explosiveness. I mean, he's still going to score touchdowns and everything, even if it's not a true bell cow snap share.
Yeah.
But I think I am in the camp that whoever brings him in will probably make him a bell cow unless they draft like a rookie or something to get like 30%. But even then, that's still bell cow territory. So I want to hear your thoughts on Justin Fields, because you mentioned a bit earlier that you thought that the Vikings would be a good fit for him. How are you reading into the situation? Because I'm here in Atlanta and I'm just not giving up on it. I hope he's a Falcon. I want him to be a Falcon.
Yeah.
But what are you reading into here?
It's tough because I don't think any team is wanting to show their cards because they don't want to overpay either. I do think there is a market for Justin Fields. I think people are interested in him. All these teams are holding their cards, right? You're talking about the Steelers, a team that has freaking Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett as their two guys going into the season. You don't tell me that they're not interested in a guy like Justin Fields. Like, it seems ridiculous. So I think it's all hearsay. Justin Fields will be on a team. It's just a matter of which team that'll be. I like the Falcons situation. I actually don't mind him going to the Vikings either. I think if you look what happened with DJ Moore, I think that's actually a better situation for Justin Jefferson because he'll just be hyper targeted. That'd be a bad situation for Jordan Addison, to be honest. But Justin Jefferson would be the wide receiver one without a doubt if Justin Fields was there. I think there's a market for Fields. It's just a matter of seeing where these other guys play out. I know the number one guy in the market right now is Kirk Cousins. So I think once that domino falls, a lot more will be showing their cards. I think these teams have to not, show their cards. So that's what's happening right now. But
yeah,
the
and there
Pittsburgh
was a report
Steelers.
this week.
Yeah,
go
go
ahead.
on. The Steelers are just a team that needs a quarterback. I can't see them going into next season with Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And if that is the case, wow.
Yeah, no, I mean, the reports on both of those subjects, one, the Bears are saying now that they will wait until Baker Mayfield and Kirk Cousins sign before they move on from Justin Fields, which I think makes sense in terms of the market, as you just mentioned. Once those dominoes fall, the teams that don't have their quarterback situation figured out yet will 100% get a bit more desperate and want Justin Fields on their team. And that's where I think that'll go for sure. And then with the Steelers, now reports are coming out that good old Arthur Smith really likes Kenny Pickett. So that's a classic Arthur Smith.
Yeah, they had a great meeting in Florida. Awesome.
I love it. That's where we're at this time of year. Fantasy Plumber says, let's not pretend Fields is a better passer to Cousins. I don't think that's what we're saying, but what we're saying is that Fields locks on to his number one target, and Justin Jefferson would just have 1,000 targets from Justin Fields next season. Let's go lightning round. Russell Wilson, where's he go?
Russell Wilson. Geez, I'm going to say he goes to the New England Patriots.
I was thinking about that yesterday. I like that a lot. Okay. I think Russell Wilson to the Patriots too. That makes a ton of sense. Baker Mayfield.
Baker Mayfield stays as the Bucs. I think he either gets franchise tagged or signs a long-term deal. It really depends on what happens with Anton Winfield first. I think that's the domino that's going to fall. They might tag him or they might tag Mayfield. It's kind of go vice versa. In my opinion, I think Baker Mayfield has earned that big contract. I don't see him getting a huge contract elsewhere that isn't comparable to what Tampa can give him. They're going to be very competitive with what they have. And why would you leave that system? You made the playoffs, you won a playoff game. You got, Mike Evans that is signed for 2 years. I think Chris Godwin is going to be a sneaky play next year. And he's going to be a guy that you should keep your eye on for sure. But yeah, I love Baker Mayfield going back to the Bucs. I don't see it happening any other way. Unless a team goes out there and says, hey, here's a monster contract, but I don't see that happening either.
I don't see that happening either. And we've just broken 200 viewers right now live. That's very cool to see. Thank you all for tuning in. That's definitely a record here on Wake and Take. 400 eyes, I guess, on the show right now. And then lastly, Calvin Ridley back in Jacksonville, or where do you think he ends up?
Ridley, where does Ridley go? There's a lot of teams that could be in the market for Ridley. Really depends to me. I think the Giants are a team that could be in the market there, depending on what they do with their number 6 pick. If they decide that Daniel Jones is their guy, then I don't think Ridley's going to go there, because I think they'll pick a wide receiver with their number 6. But if they decide to go quarterback, I think they're going to need to bring in a veteran. I also think the Patriots could be in line for Ridley as well, his services there. I'd like you to see him as a Chief, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to garner too much money with the season he just had, 1,000-yard season. I think he had 11 touchdowns. Between 8 and 11 touchdowns. I don't know the exact stat, but Ridley had a good season, especially when Kirk left the field there for that time there with his injury. So Ridley's going to be a name that is going to be the top guy now. When you think about it, Mike Evans signed, Michael Pittman signed the tag. Same with T. Higgins. They're getting tagged. So those big names are coming off the market, and that wide receiver free agency market is dwindling pretty slim now. So we'll see what happens. Ridley could be getting a big contract now with the new salary cap increase and with all these new with these names that have been signed or tagged.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think he'll be back in Jacksonville either. I think he's going to end up somewhere. I'm feeling the Panthers, the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that would be great. I think they need to put some sort of talent around Bust Young, because he's been another guy that you should probably look at in a dynasty that you can get on super cheap, because they're going to put some weapons around him, and he was the first overall pick, so you can't really give up on him just yet.
No, definitely. And before we move on to your hot take and what you're working on, I did want to point out Ryan says that the Buccaneers did tag Winfield.
Oh,
and I just want to touch on that, because they did, after tagging him, say that that's not where we're ending this thing, that we are still trying to work out a contract. And that's where I think the money will come in for Baker Mayfield. Talked about it a bit yesterday. The full contract was laid out for Mike Evans. And while it was a lot of money, it's backloaded. He's not counting a lot towards the cap this year. And I think that they could try to work out the same thing with Winfield, with Baker Mayfield, try to kind of backload these contracts, add some void years, put some guarantees later, and add some incentives. And that's kind of where I think this is going with the Buccaneers, is we're just going to see some contract wizardry coming out of Tampa.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to the topic of the show. I've been waiting all morning to hear this.
Okay.
Super excited. Even switched into the blue turtleneck this morning instead of the black turtleneck. What's your hot take?
Okay. And this is hot. Okay. So I am telling you all to sell Justin Herbert. He is currently my QB 15 in Dynasty. That's pretty slow. I'm going bold here. Justin Herbert was drafted as a QB 5 in 2023, redraft, and was also a top 5 ranked Dynasty quarterback. That was too rich for my blood. Yes, Herbert is a capable quarterback. He's shown by his QB2 finish in 2021, but things have changed drastically for him in that offense since then. In 2023, playing 14 games, Herbert was the QB 10, 5 spots off his ADP. His QB2 finish, was slinging the ball over 40 times a game. That year, he averaged 5 less pass attempts per game. He also averaged 54 less passing yards, throwing a full touchdown less a game in comparison. I was lower on Herbert before Harbaugh signing, and the Harbaugh signing doesn't move the needle for me either, because he needs to pass the ball 40 times a game to be a top-tier quarterback. He is limited with his legs. Jim Harbaugh, despite being a former quarterback, isn't known for having a high-powered offense. Harbaugh is known for a run-heavy offense. His 9 years in Michigan was a clear example of that. And I know that you are a Michigan follower, so you know that very well there, Jay. So throwing the ball less will severely impact his value moving forward. Herbert is definitely a sell for me, especially if you can turn him for a first-rounder and a nice complimentary piece. Sell Justin Herbert. He is my QB 15 in Dynasty. I have quite a few guys ahead of him. If you want to know, I have Trevor Lawrence still ahead of him. I've got Kyler Murray. I've got Dak Prescott. I even have Jaden Daniels sneaking ahead of him at this stage, just based off of the Harbaugh news. So I'm going bold there. I'm sorry, Jason. He's your guy, but let's hear it back. I know you got some fuel for my side here.
I guess I want to, before we get into it a bit further, you mentioned some of the players. Let's just talk about this. So right now he's at quarterback 8 on Player Profiler. Let's just do the name game. Here are the quarterbacks after him. You tell me if you take the quarterback. You already said Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
Caleb Williams.
Yes.
You already said Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
Justin Fields.
No.
Okay. Jordan Love.
Absolutely.
Brock Purdy.
Absolutely.
Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
Drake May.
Drake May, no.
Tua.
Yes.
Okay. Bryce Young.
No.
Kirk Cousins.
No.
Jared Goff.
No.
Okay. So I think we'll kind of stop it right there. I mean, you already said it. You're right around that quarterback 15 range.
Yeah.
Would you perhaps be more inclined, because I just want the audience to kind of figure out what you mean by sell.
Yeah.
You already said the first round pick, but would you say maybe use Justin Herbert to try to get you into that upper echelon, or are you using him to tear down a bit?
Both. I mean, if I can tear up with a Justin Herbert, absolutely. Justin Herbert is a great quarterback still, folks. I'm not disclaiming that at all. But I saw his peak, in my opinion, when he had the QB2 finish, and he needs to throw the ball a ton, and he doesn't have the legs. When you look at guys that are ahead of him right now, that have legs, that can make those big plays, I'm more concerned about his system now with Harbaugh going in there. That's my big concern with him moving forward. I don't have his receiving core too is very up in the air as well. They're aging. We don't know what's going on with Mike Williams. Keenan Allen's on the edge slope, and Quentin Johnson, wow, what a bust that was last year. And there's not a whole lot going around there. And I could see them going in there and taking a running back with their picks and just pounding the ball down. So I'm worried about Justin Herbert.
I think that's reasonable. I'm just a big Justin Herbert guy. I find him fun to watch. And I mean, you can kind of look at his metrics, especially last season. I mean, they've all taken a hit, arguably because there was no receiver core. Offensive line was a bit injured. But I mean, that was the case in 2022. And I mean, he actually flashed a bit more. Almost still 5,000 yards in 2022, 25 touchdowns versus last year, of course, less games, but still only 3,000 yards, 20 passing touchdowns, and only 18.6 points per game. It's not great. I mean, you can even look at the metrics. There's not a single one inside the top 10, except for completion percentage versus man, which is good. He's third in that. Ninth in dropped passes, which kind of demonstrates that his wide receivers are not catching the ball. Fifth in quarterback rating, which I think is pretty good. And that's it. Everything else, except for like team metrics, like pace of play and team pass plays per game, he's outside of the top 10, not really finding much success. And you mentioned that the Chargers will probably be a bit more run heavy next season. I think it'll be a bit more balanced per se. I don't really think he's going to try to run exactly what he was running in Michigan with the Chargers. I do think that Jim Harbaugh is still more of a coach that utilizes his players' skill sets. So while Justin Herbert may not be throwing the ball 40 times a game, I still think he'll hit 30, 35 pretty easily. And I do think with a good run game, play action will be able to make a return. That's something that hasn't really been in the Chargers offense too much. And I do think they're going back to the well at wide receiver and maybe even tight end if they want to go Brock Bowers and really elevate from Gerald Everett. And then you're talking about a team that has still Keenan Allen. I do think they're moving on from Mike Williams. So just Keenan Allen and then whatever wide receiver tight end they draft, I think they're going to do one. They could get one in free agency as well. And I think that Blake Corum is going to be the running back that they bring in. But if they bring in a more pass-catching one, like a Marshawn Lloyd, who's the other, those two running backs are the two that are tied to the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh, of course, coaching Blake Corum, and the new running back coach was the running back coach for USC as well with the Chargers now. So Marshawn Lloyd is also tied to the team. I think we're talking about an upgraded offense. God, I really think he's right about where he should be valued. I'm not going to lie. I don't know.
It's a tough one. I think they're going to be in tighter games as well. I like the way that Harbaugh runs his defenses. I think they're going to be in tighter games and they're going to be in some run heavy game scripts. And I just don't think they're going to need to sling the ball as much. Denver does not look great. They're going to be tough pressed. They play them twice a year. The Chiefs, they have changed their game too. They're not a prolific offense anymore. They're relying on their defense to win games. They're not going to be in shootouts anymore either. So when you take that out of that division, 2 years ago, that division was one of the highest flying offensive divisions in football. I think that's taken a step back. You look at the Raiders now too, who are going to be going in with a brand new quarterback. Their defense is running off of, their defense is lights out as well. So the AFC West defenses units are stacking up and they looking a lot better. And I think it's shifting of the guard. So I'm worried about, Herbert's QB8 ranking. I might be a little bit too low on Herbert. I think maybe the QB12 might be a good mix between the two of us here. And that's kind of where I see it right now.
So before we get out of that, I do just want to point out, I mean, you mentioned the concerns. I mean, even last season, in an offense with Kellen Moore, he only had 4 games with more than 2 touchdowns, which is it's concerning. I mean, you want him to score some points. So I'm going to go back to the name game. Are you to the point where you would take like 1-for-1 trades with some of the quarterbacks that you mentioned, like Justin Herbert for Anthony Richardson? You're just doing that.
Oh yeah.
Kyler Murray, like 1-for-1.
No, because you know what? Like, I mean, even though I got Kyler ranked ahead, you got to keep your name value there. People are a lot higher on Herbert, so I'm not going to give a name like Herbert, who people value higher than I do, that space. So yeah, I'm definitely not going to do that 1-for-1. I understand my rankings are different than what other people value Herbert at. So I know I can get more. And that's why I'm trying to get more or trade down to somebody similar and get an extra piece.
All right. Well, you've heard it here first, probably, to go ahead and sell some Justin Herbert. I don't hate it. I really don't. When you first told me, I was a little upset about it. But then, you look into the metrics and understand that, that things probably aren't going to be too great for him next season in terms of the ceiling. I do still think the floor will certainly be there, which is actually really nice because that's actually a lot of what he's missing, especially in 2022. I mean, he had multiple games under 15 points, multiple games under 10 points, which was just terrible. So I'm glad to see the floor back. But we're certainly going to see a lot of the ceiling zapped from him. And so I don't hate it, especially if there's another quarterback in that range that you're a bigger fan of. Tier down, tier up, whatever you have to do. It's not the worst move in the world for sure. Even if Justin Herbert's probably a franchise quarterback for the next 10 seasons.
I love what you said there. I love what you said there about the floor and the ceiling, because that is exactly how I view it. Okay. His floor is actually increasing, and that's a really good thing for fantasy football. You're not going to have to like Justin Herbert might not win you a week next year. Like, he might not go out and win you a week like he has in the past, but he's not going to lose you one now. And that's where it has been in the past, where you were relying on Herbert to win you weeks, and that's not probably going to happen moving forward, but his floor is going to be a lot better, and you just got to adjust with that. So yeah, I think you nailed it right on the head there. Good take, Jason. You should do this for a living.
I do. So we'll move on from the hot take to just what you're working on before we sign out of here. You're doing some great work with the news desk and beyond. So just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, where they can find you, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, totally. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. I had a blast talking football. You can find me on the news desk at the Player Profiler. So, this is a new incentive that we started in the fall, and we've been really taking the bull by the horns. The news desk is, reporting breaking news as it comes in. We're doing, adding content with YouTube videos, TikToks, that kind of stuff. But, you can find us right on the Player Profiler website on the news tab, and everything that comes up, we got a great crew that is busting that out too. And then you can find some of my work on the Dynasty Pulse, which is on the Fantasy Football Network. That's the podcast I do once a week with my good boy Brendan Booth, who is also a Player Profiler news desk anchor as well. So him and I have been hanging out for the last year, and we've created this great relationship, and we're rocking it hard. Last week we had Josh Larkey on our show. Tonight we have Dave Kluge coming on, so we got some bigger names joining us. And then I also do work for the Undroppables as well, so I've been tasked with helping create a NFL content specific team oriented stuff. So I'm helping onboard people with that and getting their feet wet in content creation. So that's kind of what I've been doing lately.
That's awesome. Keep up the great work, man. Thank you for joining me. Tons of fun chopping it up with you. We'll definitely have you on again sometime. Before we sign off, there are a few questions in the chat. Yeah. Let's hear your thoughts on Tank Dell and Marvin Mims, or the 104 and 204 in a Superflex tight end premium.
Ooh, super flex. Okay, so for me here, depending on what your quarterback situation is like, I like the Tank Dell there. The 104 is a very, very high valued pick for me, and the 204 too. This draft is insane. I think the 204 is worth way more than Marvin Mims, and I think the 104 is worth more than Tank Dell. So for me, right there, it tells me that those picks are the way to go for me.
I am. It's honestly not that close to me. I would definitely take the picks on this side. I think that's a smash accept. Really, any day of the week. I love Tank Dell, but all the injury concerns are still there. They are all still there. I know he played really, really well, but he's still undersized, and we saw the injuries. Yeah. And the Texans are probably getting a wide receiver with everything we're hearing.
I would honestly take Malik Neighbors off of both those guys, and then you still get the 204. So I love that move.
Really, really good value there. Yeah. Let's see. Jamie wants to know what they could get for a package of Quentin Johnston and Jalen Hyatt. I would honestly just hold on to these guys. I really don't think you'll be able to get much.
Totally. Yeah. You invested a lot of draft capital last year in those guys. Probably a first rounder on Quentin and a second rounder on Hyatt. I think you got to let them blossom. You got to see what happens in those offenses, because both those teams are in limbo right now, and you got to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I want to talk about Quentin for a second, just because last year Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley, they clearly didn't know how to use him, nor did they try to use him correctly. And Jim Harbaugh is actually a smart guy and a dude who knows how to utilize his players' strengths. And so while Quentin Johnson is probably never going to reach his first round draft capital and what you gave for him, I do think we'll definitely see a more productive season from him, even if it is just screens and drag routes that he takes. But that's what he's good at. Let him be a yak guy instead of continuously throwing him down the field to replace Mike Williams when he's not Mike Williams. And so I do think we'll see a better season from him. And I think the same with Jalen Hyatt. I mean, the Giants offense last season, it wasn't even they were bad. It was like they were fighting a curse. Like, it was just hilariously unfortunate for the Giants last season. I think that team as a whole is just going to look better, get the monkey off their back. And a big part of it is going to be that passing game, especially with Saquon Barkley gone. It's just going to be a different offense. I want to see what can happen. I don't think you're getting anything worth a damn for these players, at least compared to their ceiling.
Yeah, especially what you paid for them too. I mean, Quentin Johnson was a first round pick. And you know what? If we cut our losses now and actually see what he actually is, like, he's not a true alpha wide receiver. He never will be. But if you can get him in a system, hopefully Harbaugh can do it like you mentioned. I think he can be a productive player. He won't be that alpha. He won't be a top 24 guy, but he may get those spike games and, he could be a top 36 wide receiver if things all go well for him.
For sure. So I think you just hold, Jamie. Let's see. I saw something that I wanted to talk about. Oh, Chevy says to wait to sell Herbert until after the NFL draft when they draft a wide receiver or weapons. I think that's reasonable. I think right now you should just start shopping and maybe mention that, the Chargers are going to add a pass catcher. Because, his value is probably not going to get too much higher. I think that top 6, top 7 of quarterbacks is already pretty locked in. Yeah. So, you could wait, but I think you could also probably right now still do it at least a little bit. And last question. They traded Justin Herbert for the 101 and Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, that's a good pick for me. I like the 101 there. Caleb Williams, can't go wrong. Even Marvin Harrison, like in a super flex, like both those guys are, I love that trade. I love it a lot.
It's all. I may have asked for a different wide receiver, but I am just curious to see where if Jeudy lands somewhere nice, I think that he could turn it around. The profile's still there. The draft capital is still there. I think the Broncos was just not the right fit for him.
I was a Jerry Jeudy truther headed into this season, and it bit me a couple times. So I'm going to shut up on that one.
Reasonably so. Yeah. That is all the questions. Thanks again for joining me. One last time, tell them where they can follow you. On Twitter and I guess your most important place, which is probably Twitter.
So it's Twitter, or X, if you will, at FFCanuck99. You can find all my work on the Player Profiler news desk. We've been rocking it out. You could just take a look at our stuff. We posted over 60 prospects this weekend on the news desk with blurbs and stuff. So we're really working hard there to build up that section of Player Profiler, and I think we're doing a good job of it.
Yeah, y'all are. It is just the news desk is incredible stuff. Go check that out. It's playerprofiler.com/news, right? Or is it playerprofiler.com/fantasy/? No, okay. Just /news.
News, yeah.
So go check that out, guys. Genuinely, you could bookmark that page and refresh it every couple hours, and there's going to be something new there. Constant updates out there on that website, on the new Player Profiler News Desk YouTube channel, and the TikTok. You can go search Player Profiler News on those platforms for some extra advice from this guy and some other great Player Profiler News Desk anchors. Thanks again for joining me. Audience, thanks again for tuning in. This was a record-breaking Wake and Take, 232 viewers now. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and sticking around. And we will all see you tomorrow with another very special guest. John Lobb will be joining me to discuss a lot of the same stuff. So make sure you tune in tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern on the Player Profiler, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and now Twitter, Monday through Friday. Don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to Player Profiler. Have a terrific Thursday and a wonderful rest of your week. Peace.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.